I'm just going to get straight to the point today. I needed to search the actual term because I remember hearing about this from other generalized sources about private donations. And technically, the law is called Citizens United versus FEC, which I assume is the Federal Elections, the Federal Elections Commission. So, according to some ruling of judges, it has been inferred that the American constitutions, or whatever the correlation and Bill of Rights, are free speech. Forgot what clarifiability for that. Again, I'm a common folk. You'll have to excuse me. But to my general understanding, basically, why in the world did some of these judges think that allowing money to supersede general free speech in the form of voting, when we clearly know that basically infers that someone's wealth is in the form of speech. Someone's wealth is in the form of having more speech power than someone such as a common folk such as me. Hi. You don't have a voice in this country if you can't elect someone you like. I was like, hey, I like this guy. I want to help him out. It's just a local person, maybe someone like me, just a local person, totally, yeah, and wasn't being, funded by billions of dollars, because then it would probably be not most likely that person who I want to be elected. It'd be some other crazed individual for all I know. I mean, yeah, that's a bit of an overreach to say that, but, basically, someone else that I would rather not prefer. Logically, I really need to do some research, but I'm going to look at those general summaries. I don't remember what the actual correlation is about the judge's summary of why they think that was a good idea, because it's like, law in this country is so flabbergastedly everywhere. The fact that we have speech, the fact that we have defamation, all these things can be used and abused, obviously. And the fact that we have to go through the slow, the painful motion, the expensive notation of these laws, and for having these people to go through them, waste their time. Of course, it depends on per case basis. Some of it's legitimate, some of it's not. But the case being, like, law is just, honestly, I think law in America is just, I'm going to say it's just bullshit. I'm sorry, but some of it, not all of it, but some of it is bullshit. Some of these clarifications are bullshit. And, it's just, it amazes me to know that, why in the world did some of those judges honestly think that was fair? It's like, it's fair because everyone gets these amenities. So it's like, hey, even the people who have all this power via money can actually do it because it's free speech. Even though clearly knowing how these things work and elections work, people who are going to get donated billions of dollars is, one, going to have more exposure, have a lot more buying power of elected officials and so on and so forth, lobbyism. How does that, how are these very intellectual judges supposed to understand that this basically means that's what's going to happen? The fact that the chances are very likely that will happen. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand the opposite side of the argument to some extension, because what if there was good capitalism? If there is any. Not as to say they wouldn't be. I mean, can't have the benefit of the doubt. Look, there might be some great capitalists out there. Probably not that many in this day and age, but there might be a few. I don't really know any from the top of my head. I hope there is, but I don't think there's that many. Most people out there with wealth and shit, they don't care. They really don't. They're just there to line their pockets and just be the true Americans of freedom, while everyone else is the opposite of that. So, it's just, yeah. I don't know. Capitalism can be great, but only if it had laws, rules, and regulations, which not many we have that really combats against the abuse of capitalism altogether, or people of the wealthy, or however you want to say it. So basically, yeah, it surprises me that law was really accommodated in the way that it was. So yeah, that's basically, to me, that's just crazy. I mean, a bunch of people who have no money is superseded by someone with a shit ton of money in an election, which is going to have ads, which are going to show everywhere. Everyone's going to know about it. They're going to be on the internet. They're going to be on your local television about your state, about that election, or even anywhere, because we're talking about presidency. Let alone, I mean, not even for presidency, even for local law and local elections. And for whatever reason, some Democrats and Republicans could be wrong. Or actually, was it even voted for, or was it just brought up through the Supreme Court as a jurisdiction? I'm not sure. But the case being, the fact that either between conservative or non-correlated judges or otherwise, or Republicans or Democrats who even brought this forward to the attention, and even more so, the lawyers who brought this into attention to the Supreme Court for that matter, very suspicious, because none of that makes any sense. None of that is fair. It's fair that I have a bunch of wealth and I'm allowed to pour all these billions of dollars because it is speech. Money is speech. If money is speech in the form of power, then how is that anywhere near the equitable factors of people who don't have that vast amount of wealth just sitting in their buttholes to actually have a say-so in anything? So in which case, how is that freedom? How is that the uniqueness of individual freedoms that are being superseded by someone else's wealth, which is in the form of power, which is in the form of higher free speech than others? So does that precedent those other people to less subjection in the power of speech? I don't know what the general jurisdiction, but I am curious about what judges would have to say about that in this day and age. But of course, that's neither here nor there. There's a lot of other shit that's going on, which I'm sure they're very busy with. But would be nice to know. Or even previous judges who are probably either retired or still around. But doubt I'd get that answer, but if I do, that'd be nice. But basically, yeah, that's all I have to say for this. This general concern of mine. It's just, I find it weird. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's one of the problems with this country. It's just, it's all about trying to define good and evil, or malicious things, or things that are obviously questionable in terms of moral sense versus a good moral sense. Because it's like, yeah, money is a neutral concept. Money in a vast amount is still a neutral concept. Money in a vast amount owned by someone is still a neutral concept. But money invested in someone who has a bad or good intention with that money, in the inference of free speech, which influence elections, which influence the factor that no one else gets a say-so in our elected government because they don't have money to begin with, and then they elect some other bozo. Pardon my French, but, that's basically the case in point. How is that? It is, in fact, just generally defined. Oh, yeah, it's speech. But how is that fair? It's speech, but how is it fair? At that point, we're in a rabbit hole. And at that point, we can just go on and on, but who are we kidding? This country is a shit show half the time when it comes to law and legalization, to some extensions, at least to my opinion. And I think some of it just doesn't make any split of sense. Because law only looks at what law is. Law only looks at what is considered right from wrong, but based on words. It does not infer to morality too much. It does not infer to too much of that, unfortunately. I think it does to some extent, but again, I'm a common person, common folk. Don't really know too much about law. But if you ask me, it just feels more and more so that there's less morality more than what is written by law and by text to say what is allowed and what isn't, and what is considered illegal and what isn't, but not ever infer to the factors of moral consequence and how that is issued into the factor of judgment to pass a verdict of any kind, to say that no, this is not allowed in America, and this is. It's just one of the weird things when it comes to law, I guess. And I will continue to question it. It's just really weird. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I hope you all have a wonderful evening and night, day, whatever the case. It's a cosmic buffet. That's a reference. But I'll see you all later.